Two of the Art Lewis Show, and we have a very special guest with us this morning. He is an educator, an administrator, an author, a musician, a life coach. How he has time for anything in his life, I don't know, but we'll find out this morning as we welcome Don Steele to the program. Don, good morning to you.
Thank you, Art. Thank you for having me on. I know you have great reach, and it's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Just for history, when were you superintendent of Saginaw Schools?
75 through 78.
75 through 78. Then, if I'm remembering right, you went to Toledo,
Ohio.
and then you went to the state of Washington, right?
Seattle, Washington.
Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
And then, is that where you retired out of education from?
Yes. I left Seattle and I joined the Pacific Institute. I always say I started, when I got out, I bought a desk on credenza and operated out of my house as a consultant.
Well, gee, you sort of still do that today, don't you?
Well, I'm back to that kind of, but I it took me 6 months to make my first sale, and that's when I sold my desk on credenza. So I went to work with the Pacific Institute and got to work with Lou Tice and his wife Diane and John that we'll be talking about today, John McNeil, who is a shining light in this coaching and atmosphere.
So let's talk about that, because I had seen you a few weeks ago and you said, "Oh yeah, I got a new job," and I went, "What?" Because you have your own independent consulting firm.
I've had that for years.
You've had that for
coaching
years.
and consulting, yeah.
And when you say coaching, what are you coaching? When you say that, is it life coaching? What is it?
No, it's not life coaching. I have my doctorate in philosophy, so I work with psychology and education are the two domains that I work in. So I work on I'm combining cognitive psychology, which I was versed in, and neuroscience to work on how the mind works and how do you reach optimal performance. I'm called an optimal performance coach. So I worked with professional athletic teams. I worked with some movie stars. I worked with Sylvester Stallone, for example. I worked with a lot of people that are already performing at a pretty high level but want to move it to the next level.
It's a form of life coaching in a way.
Yeah. Life coach
impacts your life. I mean,
Yeah, the life coach, you can do that just by saying I'm a life coach.
Yeah, without the professional credentials.
Yeah, the thing we're working on now is providing real professional certification to coaches who go through our training.
So, talk about this new job. What is the company you're working with?
Okay, it's called the Lighthouse Foundation, Foundation for Humanity, and it is it's actually called the Lighthouse for Humanity Foundation. I reversed the verbiage there, but it has a vision. We're a world where every individual, regardless of geography or circumstance, can see more, be more, and do more. And it's illuminated by the transformative light of knowledge, belonging, and possibility. That's kind of a vision statement. But what it's saying is people are frequently stuck, and we teach them how to become unstuck. And that's by showing them how to see more, become more, and do more.
And this, we should point this out, this is at a very high level. The people you're dealing with are already well established for the most part.
Yes.
Most part.
That's the way where we've been. But Raul Castillo was a very successful in the business of interest
Finance?
I'm stumbling here. He was in the business of selling insurance.
Oh, okay.
But when I talked to him, he sold his company for a nice sum, and he wanted to give back. He lived a very, very difficult childhood, kind of abandoned and on his own, and he ended up getting his molecular degree, molecular biology degree, and but he went into the business of not selling insurance. He said, I didn't ever want to be seen as a salesman. I wanted to be seen as a person who likes to help people. So coming from that perspective, he built a wonderful business. He was really focused on not being seen as a salesman. And so he built a team and very successful business. So when he sold that business, he decided he wanted to keep on helping people. And he really wants to, our major goal is to help those people who don't have access or can't afford the kinds of information that we provide.
Which is interesting because if I remember right, the information you provide as a coach is not cheap.
No, it is not cheap. It's expensive when we train the certified. When people get certified, it's $10,000 a person, but we expect them to reach out and provide this service to people who won't have access, can't afford it, or whatever. So we're going to touch on education. We're going to hit the social sciences. We're going to we have a lofty vision statement and a very powerful team. Now the book that's just come out is called The Creation Code, and was written by John McNeil, who is highly intelligent, genius type, who's been coaching for many, many years, and he's the one who called me and talked to me about becoming the executive director of this organization. And we've been in touch for a long time, but this book is really a book that lays out the whole technology of it's high tech. It's got A1 tied into it, or AI tied into it. I said A1 because the head of education was on, and she said A1, and I started laughing, and then I said it myself. It exists to awaken the potential of every human being by delivering transformational education rooted in the Creation Code. Now, the Creation Code is a formula that reverse engineering of how do you achieve the outcomes you want. Terms like affirmations are thrown out a lot, but that's kind of wishful thinking, and it's useful. It's on the positive side, but the outcome formula deals with reverse engineering exactly how do you produce the kinds of outcomes that you want. And we want to get this information to people that have. I'll use a song that we once wrote. We did an album with Willie Nelson and dedicated the proceeds to Catholic Charities, which was working with street kids. And a line Dennis Knutson came up with in the song, one of the songs that we wrote, was every child on the street has a rainbow, but from where they stand it can't be seen. And that's kind of, for me, the population that we ultimately want to make a big difference with. Because everybody is born with potential. So they have to seek their identity and find out who they are and what they want, and then how do they get the outcomes that they want?
It's an interesting correlation because when I think of a rainbow, we see the scope of the rainbow, but we never see the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
You never see it. You can't see it.
Yeah.
You can't get to it. And yet we're trying all the time because, I think of what you're saying, and the first word that comes to my mind is goal setting and goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so if my goal would be to see that bucket at the end of the rainbow, that'll never happen. But should that stop me from pursuing it?
Right. I mean, yeah, we have goals for a reason. We move toward and become like what we think about as a basic concept of cognitive psychology, whether it's good for us or not. So
that's a problem.
If you're dwelling on all the negatives, you're going to move toward
well,
that.
You're going to be negative. Yeah.
And we have a lot of that going on today. And so the whole positivity movement, everything in the Creation Code is evidence-based, using the greatest researchers the world has ever known. And the Creation Code has an avatar. We're going to have an avatar that is, it's all being developed and it's described in the book. But the essential thing is this genius called Sage Quinn. Through AI, we've aggregated all of the information from the brightest minds ever in the fields of psychology, philosophy, religion, you name it. And he has access to this information. And So whatever question is asked, he can answer that question from a very serious base. Now, Landon is a person being coached, and he asks these serious questions, and then the avatar answers from this base of information
AI
that can be drawn through AI that has been put together. And we'll have such ability, since we are international in scope, like our website will be, of course, in English. But if you scroll down and hit this, it can be immediately translated into Japanese or any other language. So it's very very high tech, but it's very entertaining. We call it education or edutainment because it's the avatar is a goat, and he's got all this knowledge. Goat, greatest of all time.
I got it.
You know.
I got it. Yeah. I'm going to take a break, and we'll be back. We're talking to Don Steele. More ahead here on the Art Lewis Show.
Hey, it's Charlie Root here.
RV, it's like you're automatically on vacation, even if you're actually a marriage counselor in the middle of couples therapy. But in your mind, you're camping in Acadia. Puttering around Frenchman Bay. Your boat and RV are both protected. You're lobster drenched in butter and... Uh-oh. Did your clients just notice you weren't listening?
All right, we're back with you here at WSGW. We're talking to Don Steele. As I said, he has more credits and titles to his name than I can accomplish in this program. And we'll come back to this coaching that you're doing now and this institute that you are now the executive director of. But I want to talk about some other things, Don. First of all, as an educator, put your educating hat back on again. In Michigan, we spend more money than almost any other state, yet our results are down near the bottom of the pile. What's the disparity? What's wrong with that picture?
I can look at it from two ways. One, education is so vitally important, and if you look at it from a cost perspective, I was doing some research lately, and if you paid for babysitting services for 6 hours a day, you'd pay about 6 times 15.
Easily.
Yeah. Now you multiply that by 182 days a year, it dwarfs the amount you pay in taxes for education. But people, and some of the data about how well we're performing internationally is skewed against us. In Japan, people will pay $50,000 to get the kid in the right kindergarten. And so our expenditures, teachers in Michigan get paid pretty well compared to most places in the country, and it's a result of the unions driving the cost. Education is part of that union network. So, and I'm not making that as a positive or negative statement. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So my daughter-in-law is moving to Michigan right now, and she was a principal in Tucson, and she's going to be a teacher. She likes to work with the hearing impaired, so she's going to be a teacher in Michigan. And they'll match her salary, and her salary would be more than she was making as a principal in Tucson. So that gives you some idea. Most teachers come into this because they love kids or they love a subject. I always say elementary teachers love kids, and that's why kids generally are happy in elementary school, less happy because in high school they tend to love their subject, and they love you if you love their subject. So. That's it's a very difficult question to answer. I'm still a supporter of keeping public schools. I'm not against having some charter schools or things of that type, as long as they're better or different. But if they just repeat the same stuff with the same population, I went to a Catholic school. I went to St. Andrews, which is a private school, and we had to pay extra to get in there. My guess is if they have charter schools, on a big scale, you'll still have to pay extra for those schools beyond what the state provides.
Well, of course, now we have charter schools, and they're not religious based, although there's attempts to move it that way. If we were to look at charter schools and parochial schools, if you will, are the results better?
Generally, I would say they are.
And is that because the youngsters that are there because they want to be there, or their families and parents want them to be there, and that there's greater parent involvement?
Greater parent involvement. Sometimes there's a greater economic opportunity to do it. And I looked at the 25 or so charter schools for Saginaw Valley as a challenge for me, and most of the schools were doing a really good job of what they portend to do. Some were not. Were not, any better than a public school in the area, but they can be pretty selective in their population, who they accept. So there's some discrepancies. When I was in Seattle, we had 82 languages and dialects. So we had challenges, with bringing in Hmong population that at that time only had a spoken or a written language for 20 years. So we had all kinds of challenges in that domain. And if we didn't have funding, I don't know what we would have done with those populations. I think most public schools, especially if you talk about Saginaw Township and Saginaw City has diminished greatly. When I was superintendent of schools, we had 25 or 30,000 students.
Well, yeah, and population of the city now is only 42 in the city.
And Arthur Hill was 2,500 kids, and Saginaw High was probably 2,000 or slightly less than that. And now they have 1,200 kids in the Saginaw United. So it's really affected the city. It's kind of like the donut description. There's a hole in the middle and all the dough's on the outside. So, well, I don't want to waver on this, but I'm very strongly supportive of public education, but I'm not opposed to other alternatives that offer something better or different. They need to be lighthouses.
Well, if we look at it from a standpoint of competitiveness, I would think that having charter schools and alternate choices would force the public schools to be better so that they are competitive.
That's what I mean by lighthouses. They should show the way to better achievement, better social adaptation. When I was in Seattle, I was speaking to a Rotary group. At the time, and they probably still do, they had the second largest Rotary in the country. L.A. was the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to them, and they said, how many students do you have in the school district? And I said, let me answer that question. I would say about 55% are students, and the rest are we warehouse. And what do you mean by warehouse? Well, they don't want to be there. They're very difficult to deal with. Sometimes there's problems, but we become a place for them to go that's safer in their neighborhood than their neighborhood. It's better than, it has a lot to offer.
You're a placeholder.
Yeah, we're kind of a placeholder in some ways. It's a good thing that exists, because I don't know what would happen if it didn't.
They'd be on the streets.
Yeah, they'd be on the streets and being influenced. I don't delude myself into saying kids don't get educated wherever they are, but they get educated in the schools and stuff they don't get on the streets.
Yeah.
And vice versa, by the way.
Yeah. I would take a break, come back. We're talking to Don Steele. We'll have more ahead after these notes.
Looking for top quality seafood?
But he has many titles and he does many things. One of them is author. And before we get back to the Lighthouse, and we will return to it, you have put your name on a lot of books. Most of them I would call biographical, because they're really about individuals and people, aren't they?
Yeah, they're biographical, and they're basically aimed toward people who are very entrepreneurial in spirit and behavior. If you talk about John Hall, one of the first books I wrote, or the Shepler group. In fact, John called me this morning to say, how you doing? And he filled me in on what he's doing, and we talked for a little while. But the first book I wrote was on the Sheplers. I had done some consulting with them. They own the Mackinac Island Ferry Company. And at the end of that year, when we put together their succession plan, I said, you should write a book about this. And Bill Shepler or Chris said, you can't we can't write a book, but you could. So that's
And there you were.
so I wrote that book, and then I got a call from Kim Norris, who is John Hall's daughter, saying, I read the book about the Sheplers. Would you write the one about my dad? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, she said, you went to school with my dad. And I said something funny like, who did he kill? Because we had all these mafia people in our class. She said, he didn't kill anybody. I said, who is it? John Hall. Well, John quit school after the 10th grade. He ended up getting his degree, but very bright guy. He was very interested in cars and art and stuff like that, which we didn't have.
Yeah.
We taught reading, writing, and religion. That's what we got. And he was in the, what do you call those downhill, you make a race car and you...
Pinewood, the Derby.
Yeah, he won that Derby.
Pine Car
one year.
Derbies.
Yeah. What do you call it?
Pine Car Derbies, I think they
Something
are. It's the
like-
Boy Scout, the Scouts do it.
Yeah, it's pretty big stuff. But he, he would have a bicycle with a steering wheel on it. I thought, how in the world does he do that?
Huh.
And but he was very, and then he went in the military. He got so many speeding tickets and went in the military. Anyway, I wrote his life story. Then I met with Tammy Bernier, and she said my dad might be a good story. So all these daughters are coming up and saying, you might want to write about my dad. And so I wrote Terry Duperrin's book.
Yeah, I've seen that one. I read that
the
one.
next one was, I think, was Scott Holman.
Yeah, who I also know.
And a very interesting entrepreneur guy. And John Kolhavi, his book is out right now, and they're doing a script for a movie.
And we are waiting patiently for the book about Dennis DeRozier.
Yeah, Dennis DeRozier's book is on its way. And we're really, Andy Bethune was the guy who suggested that we do that book. Mm-hmm. And, the script is all written, but he said we need to add something at the end, a chapter that he's taking responsibility for, and we'll probably end up sharing some of the responsibility, but looking at people that have come through this Saginaw Gears, mm-hmm. one way or another, as a coach or a player.
Yep.
And gone on to bigger, better things. A good example of that would be Bruce, what's his last name? And Bruce Cassidy, who they call Butch, who's the coach of the Las Vegas hockey team.
Yeah, Knights.
The Golden Knights. And there are others that have, reached high pinnacles, and they came through here. And Andy was also, so he wants to document a couple paragraphs about those people with a picture. And we also want to show that there's kind of a model of having a great coach, a great owner, great coach, and great players, a team that works together in the community and on the ice.
The Saginaw Spirit.
And that was the Saginaw Gears and then the Spirit.
Yep.
And Dennis was involved as a player, a coach, and color commentator.
Yep.
And he went through, his life was hockey.
And here's the interesting point about that. You look at the Gears and you look at the Spirit, and there are similarities because there's a great owner, great coach, great executive team, great players, great people. The teams that came in the middle didn't share any of that. And where are they today? They're gone.
Well, Charlie Coles, remember him? Mm-hmm. Charlie Coles invited me. I did a lot of work with Central Michigan. Well, first Saginaw High when he was coach, then with Central when he was the coach at Central, then Miami. But he was a great coach, by the way. And he was, I lost my train of thought here.
Great coach.
Oh, Charlie started a pro team here, AAA basketball, and it was Saginaw, Battle Creek, and some others.
Yep.
They had 2 winning seasons. They looked really good, but the league folded.
League didn't have it. Yep, I remember that.
And that happens a lot. We had a semi-pro football team here once or twice.
Yep.
I remember way back to the Saginaw Bears, which was a very successful, I think, AAA. Bob Buell pitched for them, and on his way up.
They played out at the Veterans Stadium, wasn't it? The stadium out in Buena Vista.
Somebody called yesterday.
Talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, that stadium's been gone for 20 years.
Well, I was going to say, it's not there anymore. Hard to play on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You ought to drive by it, take a look at the vacant lot. That was a very nice stadium. I'm sorry to see they did away with it, but it's hard to do that. But the Gears model, all the way through, the Spirit, has been a good model, and they had some aborted opportunities in between where they didn't have the right ownership, or they didn't have the right players, or they didn't have the right. So that's built into the fabric of the story.
Yep. All right, we're going to take our last break, come back, and talk more with Don Steele.
Looking to hit
Lewis Show. We are talking to educator, administrator, author, musician. We haven't touched on that. Don Steele is with us this morning. Now executive director of an organization called, again?
The Creation Code. It's called the Lighthouse for Humanity Foundation.
Lighthouse Foundation for Humanity.
Yeah, foundation.
One of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Don is now the executive director. It is a worldwide organization. You mentioned a website, but it's not up yet. When do you expect the website
We have
to
a
be up and
landing
running?
page up.
Oh, you do?
But we don't have the entire website built yet. And it's in process. And it's very complicated because we're working with a couple very strong people. Optispan is run by a guy named Dave Sabian. It's a data center that handles like Google and Microsoft and
Big
stuff
stuff.
like that. So he can give us information that we need, the technology to get strong information quickly, and then Starlink.
Elon Musk's.
Can get everything
Yep.
all throughout the world momentarily.
Yep.
So those are two people that we're going to be engaged with, and powerful stuff.
I have to ask, though, Don, you and I, neither of us are spring chickens.
No.
We've been around a while. Why, at this point in your life, did you decide to move on to do something else? It's in line with your education, obviously, but
Yeah, it's in line with the coaching I've done and everything. But first, I have great respect for John McNeil, who wrote the book, The Creation Code. And when he asked me if I would do that, it was almost an automatic, tell me about it, but probably. That poem I gave you, called The Dash.
yeah, I read that on the air the other day.
Oh, did you? I feel a tremendous opportunity here to fill in the rest of what I do with contributing to what happened. How did I fill in the dash? Doing the greatest good for the people who need it the most.
For those of you who didn't hear it the other day, The Dash is a poem about a gravestone marker that has the day, the year you were born and the year you died, and usually between the two is a dash. Lived from such and such a year dash such and such a year. And this poem is about the dash, which represents the overwhelming majority of your life. And it really was very special. A wonderful piece of prose, and really makes you think about how you use your time on Earth.
It does. And that's the most important part. You got the birth and you got the death. Birth makes happy, death usually sad. But in between, what happened? And I see my role in this project the way John McNeil sees it, the way Raul sees it, the way another coach that I work with, I have great respect for, Denise Mills. We all see this as an opportunity to really add to that legacy, if you call it, of what we've done with our lives. And I think this thing is going to unfold in magnificent ways. We've got tremendous involvement of people in high places. They want to do things in people in low places.
I have to say, as I listen to this, and as I've listened to you talk about it before, my mind automatically goes back to my father. And the reason I say that, you and my father would have got along because he was a great thinker. He was well educated. He was a criminal tax lawyer and a CPA. So he did his dues, Worked for the government as special agent in Treasury. But he always taught me things. For example, art, don't just live in a community, be a part of the community. Which drove me when I got here to join boards of directors and things of that nature. But he was big about living your life, not just sitting back and waiting for life to come to you.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. My dad graduated, I think, from the 6th grade, my mother from the 11th grade. But my mother was very, very bright, but it was the depression when she was in high school, and she couldn't even afford the clothing